Good morning to another episode of the Morning Buzz with Russell's Fishing Tech. I'm Russell Gahagan, your host, and today I got a special guest, John Reinke from the boat Mojo Banker. John owns a boat, like I said, called Mojo Banker. He has fished our Sheboygan Salmon Cup, which is the big tournament out of Sheboygan each year that's been going on since 2009. He has fished that tournament each year that it's existed, except for the first inaugural 2009 year. So he has fished from 2010 all the way through last year, 2021, and John's fired up to fish this year in 2022. John's special in a couple of ways to me because he's been a long-time good customer and friend throughout the years, but he does something that I respect and is sort of similar to what I've done in more recent years, which is he fishes with his son and grandchildren, which I think is really, really a big deal to me, and I'm sure it's a real important thing to him. You know, as I got Lily involved over the years in fishing, I've always looked, at John's situation and really respected that because John's grandchildren are sort of in that same age category as Lily. So they were little when you got started, John, and now, they're big and Lily's big as well. So good morning. How you doing today?
I'm doing just great, Russell. Got to fish a little bit yesterday, so things are good.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So why don't you kind of start off by telling us sort of your background of the fishery, how long you've been fishing. You had mentioned to me in conversation, kind of when you had bought the boat that you have now, what kind of boat it is, and then, give a couple minute detail about what I just talked about, the fact that you do a lot of your fishing with your son and grandchildren.
Sure. Well, I co-own the Mojo Banker with my son, John, and then I have a good fishing buddy, Jeff Jashinsky, that fishes the tournament with us. And the grandsons are Jake, Alex, and John. So we really enjoyed that co-op, if you will, over the last 10 years. Because previously I owned the boat, my son owned the boat. I started my fishing career in the Great Lakes, believe it or not, 51 years ago. And it had 2-foot itis, just like a lot of people do, from the 15-footer to the 17-footer, 19, 21, 25, and now the pro line. We used to concentrate a lot on brown trout because up till about 15 years ago, we had a real world-class brown trout fishery in Marinetta and Green Bay. It's become more of a walleye fishery now, but that's kind of where I cut my teeth and then expanded to Lake Michigan and fished the first derby I think we ever did real well, and was back in 1982 in Milwaukee, and then fished the KD tournaments almost every year since that time. And then once the Salmon Cup started, we thought, man, this is perfect for us because that way we get the family involved. We get 3 or 4 days together. We fish, we play mini golf, we go to the water park. So it's a great time. So I really applaud what you've done with the Salmon Cup and your group of people because it's been a terrific tournament.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you got out yesterday. Now we have a mutual friend named Scott, so it's kind of always fun because he's about as amped up of a fisherman as they get, I feel like, and it's always fun to communicate with him and you two fish together, and then I get a chance to fish with Scott. But I know you guys smacked him, so you might as well just give us the rundown right away.
Well, there are a lot of fish south of Port Washington now, and you had given us some hints in terms of where to go. And also all the charters were down there as well. But days like yesterday, it's pretty easy fishing. You're in 200 feet of water. You're fishing the top 100 feet. The fish are predominantly in the top 30 feet, but there are a number of fish down below too. And, we fished a midday bite, if you will, and still were able to come up with a 20 fish limit. And we just kept picking away at them steadily. I don't think we had as good a program probably as you had put together because you were smacking them early. But also, as you had mentioned, a lot of fish got off, but that's okay because if you've lost 2 in a row and you're going to get 3 more bites in the next half hour, it's all good. And it was pretty much a coho program. We didn't get any big kings like you did. We did fish some of the blue and silver stuff down deep and some of the preferred flasher flies. They tended to still take cohos. We didn't get any kings, but it was, I think, almost all cohos and a couple of Lakers mixed in. So a lot of fun and, a lot of ski boards going off, a lot of jumping behind the boat. After 51 years of doing this, it's like I get just as excited as anybody does. And as amped up as Scott is, that's pretty much, how my family gets about it as well.
Absolutely. No, that's what it's all about. Yesterday was a prime example of what I talk a lot about in seminars and salmon schools about reading the water. It was a frustrating morning in some ways, and in others, we got off the water, and I said to my buddy Matt, who I was fishing with, I said, we are spoiled, and it's disappointing almost that we acted the way we did in some ways, because you get frustrated. Like you said, we were one of the few boats on, and I'll be first one to say this, we were one of the few boats at the launch that didn't catch their limit. We did something that I don't normally ever do that often or talk about, which is we went something like 16 for 32 or something. But what I mentioned was, or what was important to me was, I noticed something that I think, really played a role, which is we were coming into a cold front, which we have basically set in now here in the Sheboygan area with a hard northeast-east wind. And it was 44 degrees yesterday morning, so it was cold. And what I think happened was, I think those cohos were off the feed, for that first couple hours of the morning. We had a lot of whap, gone, board rip back 2 feet gone, diver rips 2 times gone, rigger bouncing gone before you even can get to the rod. And that was like the polar opposite of the last trip that I had gone with Matt, where, they literally had a choke down to their throat. You couldn't think about throwing a fish back if you wanted, because they were bleeding like crazy. So it's interesting how the days are different. I think that's really important for guys to understand when they see those things. You can try to make some changes to try to develop or adapt to your program. And what I mean by that is, I played with different speeds yesterday quite a bit, a little slower, a little faster, trying to see, was there something that I could do to entice them into, choking it a little more versus just slapping at it, because that's what I felt like they were really doing. And honestly, it didn't matter. We just continued to go 1 for 3, 1 for 4, 2 for 4. We'd get in a little flurry, bang, bang, bang. And, if we got 50%, we were probably pretty lucky. So we did manage a nice king at the end, like you said. But, all in all, we had a great day. We had a ton of bites. It was a lot of fun. And I was really happy to see you guys get there and have a ton of fun. So you've got the boat now parked in Port Washington up until the Salmon Cup. Is that right?
Yeah, and then we'll run it up for the Salmon Cup and run it back. We'll keep it there till middle of July, and then we'll use it for the KD and Salmonorama. We'll get a little bit of Port Washington and a little bit of Door County as well. Interesting, though, when you were talking about yesterday, because as the day went on, I think that they actually were more aggressive, because then it wasn't just losing as many fish, they were swallowing it down. And I did notice on the deep rods, there was some pretty significant current going kind of from southwest to northeast. Up on top, it didn't make much difference, but when you got it below 40, 50 feet, you could definitely see a difference. And I think that might have had some bearing on what I was doing down deep as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think I even said that to Matt yesterday. I said, if I could do this all over again, which we couldn't because Matt had a work meeting yesterday, so we had to be in fairly early. But I said, if we could do this all over again, I said, I would rather be out here at about 9 o'clock, to be honest with you, because I said, I think they're going to chew. They're going to continue to bite just fine, but I think you'll catch them later. As that sun came up, it warmed up, the water warmed up, and it's normal spring fishing. The problem is we should be into a summer pattern by now, but unfortunately we're not. We're still stuck in spring to some level, so we're getting a little bit of that. But so let's talk some specifics about the Sheboygan Salmon Cup. So for those of you at home maybe that aren't familiar with it, I did do a recap morning buzz of it in the past, so they probably know quite a bit about it. But it's a tournament that's held out of Sheboygan. This year I believe it's June 10th, 11th, and 12th. So if you're interested in fishing it, you can get the information at russellsfishingtech.net. It's all the information is on there. It is held out of Sheboygan, Wisconsin, like I said, and I'm super excited about what the 2022 season will bring. You and I were lucky enough to take home the 2 titles for the 2021 Sheboygan Salmon Cup. And that's really the first question I wanted to ask you was, you've fished since 2010. We've had 2 different formats. We've had a format where everybody fished against each other, and we've had a format in the pro and am division. Do you have a preference? And if you do, why?
I do have a preference. I've fished it when it was open, and yes, we were able to finish in the top 10 a couple of times. But, quite honestly, I felt, I don't want to say it's a disadvantage, but, I'm not fishing Sheboygan every day. I have a limited network. And so when you started splitting it with an amateur division and then putting in a 5-fish total weigh for 2 days, it really takes a lot of pressure off. And that's what I would encourage people on the amateur side, I mean, you're never out of this tournament. You could get blanked the first day, and yet with the 5 fish weigh, you can do great the second day. So with our experience level, I mean, we might be very experienced, but not necessarily in Sheboygan. And I feel real comfortable at the amateur division. I like the challenge of the open division, but by the same token, it's an uphill climb. It really is. And we try and fish a little bit simpler spread as well. So, for us, it was just the obvious choice. And then you've got all the other options, the big fish options and the comeback options. And when there was a 333, there was that option. But quite honestly, we've always been more interested in the Salmon Cup than necessarily the 333 tournament trail part of it. That was a great adjunct, but by the same token, the real tournament is the Salmon Cup.
Well, I think I agree with everything that you said. I personally like the Pro-Am format as well. I think it invites more of your weekend guys that don't have a ton of experience or a ton of knowledge on tournament fishing. For those of you at home that don't know the difference, let me just explain that for a second. So the Pro Division is 5 fish per day, and all charter captains have to fish that. So if you have a charter captain license, I don't care if you're operating the boat, you're on the back deck, you're making sandwiches, what you're doing. If you have a charter captain's license and you're on board of that vessel, you are required to fish the Pro Division. So that's 5 fish per day. So like John said, in the Pro Division, if you come in skunked the first day, you're pretty much out of it. Which happened to me actually 2 years ago. It's only the second time I've ever been skunked in a tournament in my life. Maybe we caught one, I don't know, but it was bad regardless. And we were done, but we came back with a nice catch on day 2 and probably would have won what is now the new Feldstein's comeback award. We probably would have won that 2 years ago, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll take it as what it is. But the AM division now, what I've changed it to here for a couple of years, and it seems to really be liked, is what you said, which is 5 fish over 2 days. So in other words, you can weigh 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 on day 1. Naturally, if you weigh 5, you're eating breakfast on day 2, which I have seen that before, by the way. It has happened one time in this way I've ran this in the past. But so you can weigh up that. So most people are going to weigh 0 to 3 or 4, obviously. How many did you weigh on day 1 last year?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because last year I think we weighed 3 fish on day 1, 2 fish on day 1, and the year before 3. The year before we were in first place thinking, well, we're looking pretty good. And just to show you how it can change that quickly, we caught 2 nice fish to weigh on Sunday that 2 years ago, but they were only 17, 18 pounders. And another boat came in, couple of young guys that caught 2 big fish at the end, and they blew everybody away. So whereas last year, then I think the final day we brought in 3 fish. It was a slow fishing day. We did have one kicker king in there that really helped us out. So we were able to go from 4th place to 1st place versus going from 1st to 3rd the year before. So perfect example of how you can make a move on one day or the other, and you're never out of it.
So now there is some strategy involved in the amateur division that there isn't in the pro. And the strategy is sort of similar to the 333. Maybe talk about that a little bit. So you're going to show up in Sheboygan on Wednesday or Thursday, whatever it is. I think you usually come Wednesday and fish Thursday, or whatever the case may be. Talk about, run us through, first of all, I guess, what your pre-fishing strategy will be. You don't have to give details that you don't want to give or anything, but just like, when you get there, okay, I haven't fished Sheboygan this year. What am I going to do? And then talk a little bit about how do you know on Saturday morning, because I'm sure we're going to get this question a lot, or people are going to think this. How do you know on Saturday morning if it's a weigher or not for you? Do you decide at the end? I would assume so. Or do you decide when you catch it? Or, I'm assuming there's also some that are just no-brainers, right? He slaps the deck and he weighs 25 pounds. He's getting weighed. So run us through that whole process a little bit. When the Mojo Banker gets to town, what's the plan? And how do you run through that for a couple of days leading into the tournament?
Well, because we've been fishing in Port Washington, we have an idea within 25 miles of what the fish are doing. If we're catching all of our fish straight out of port, nothing north, we might have some concern about that. And maybe on the first pre-fish day, then we're going to run further south and fish at least down to where you're going to touch Port Washington. But then we're going to be watching. And that's the thing, it's probably more watching than it is catching, because after 10 years, you really know who the local guys are that catch fish and do well. And so we're going to look for locations of some of those boats when we're going out, and then when we're coming back in. And, we may even drop lines to fish places that they are. We've never really caught a ton of fish pre-fishing, but that's because we're just more or less looking and trying to figure out where everybody's at. Although I have been surprised at times, there have been times when we'd made this run to Port Washington 2 or 3 times on the opening morning because we felt comfortable with that. And quite honestly, even though the fish hadn't been maybe straight out or north of Sheboygan by the second day, that pattern had kind of manifested itself and the fish were right out front. So the pre-fishing for us is really more looking than it is anything else. There's a couple mornings on the second day, Russell, when I say to my son, well, what's the plan? And he'd say, whatever boat Russell's in, follow that one. So I hate to give that secret away, but I can't help it. It's just, because you're reputationally and well deserved is that, you catch fish in all kinds of conditions. You had asked then about, how do we make a decision on a fish? First day it isn't as hard because I think, if you weigh a 17 pounder and you see that a lot of other 18s and 20s are coming in, well, okay, you've got a day to recover. The other thing that, quite honestly, I'll be honest with you, I don't like to be the first boat anymore to the weigh-in because you don't really get to see the lay of the land. Even watching people take their coolers off the boat sometimes gives you an idea like, okay, if they're in the AM division and they're having a hard time lifting the cooler out, there must be some pretty big fish as well. Or if we're seeing the pros do well, the same issue. We'll note where they were fishing from our observations during either pre-fishing or the first day and try to adjust from there. But, quite honestly, anytime we get a fish that's probably over 15, 16 pounds, we're going to be considering weighing that fish because this might be a year where the fish are late enough that, these mid-teen fish might be the fish you need to weigh just to be competitive.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've always said about the Salmon Cup, and it's played true from 2009 through 2021, is the Kings tend to show up the week of the Cup. Now, the Cup has had about a 7-day, maybe it's never been that much. I think about a 5-day window or so, 5 or 6 days, depending on how it's laid out. From about, I think the earliest we've ever had it is maybe like the 5th or 6th of June. And those are generally the years it's been a little tougher. And we've had it as late as I think this year is going to be about as late as we've ever had it, which I think is around the 12th, 13th, 14th, maybe right in that area.
Sure.
And so my expectation going into this year was it was going to be really, really good fishing. I'm still going to stick with that. I will be honest, we are obviously a week or two behind in the total clock here of the fish, but I still think it's, thinking about it now, we got, I think, 2 weeks from Saturday before the Cup is. I still think it's going to be pretty darn good fishing just on how good it is in Milwaukee and Port right now. And this is always normal, and I'm going to give out a little secret that I guess I pay attention to that I don't know if everybody else does, but they are smashing Kings right now in Ludington and Manistee. And anybody that's fished the Salmon Cup before and pays attention to the network and things that I have knows that there's been other years where that's been the case. Up to the Salmon Cup, they were smashing them in Ludington and Manistee, and then all of a sudden we'd get a big northeast or east blow, which it's doing today and looks like it's going to do this weekend, and poof, those fish are gone out of Manistee and Ludington, and they show up on the Wisconsin shoreline. I'm predicting that bite will be over in Michigan by the time the Cup comes, and Wisconsin will own them Kings, and they'll be out there for us to catch. So if that's the case, I'm gonna say that barring really bad weather, this year is going to be a blockbuster Salmon Cup for some Monster King salmon. And we'll see how it comes. But that's sort of my prediction. I think it's going to be right on cue again. But what does that mean? Well, that means that pre-fish period becomes a lot less important. And what you said in the beginning was so interesting because you're so true. More years than not, a bite is developed in Sheboygan from the start of the pre-fish to the end of the tournament. There's the winning bite a lot of times is actually developed in that time period. Meaning when you went out pre-fishing on Thursday morning, it didn't exist. But by the time Sunday was done, a bite had actually developed that ended up winning the tournament. A lot of times it's close to Sheboygan. I've won it a couple of times north, about 20 miles, and I won it south, I think, maybe 5 or 6. But really, I've done the bulk of my success in that tournament from, 4 or 5 miles north, 4 or 5 miles south. So not super far away from the port to where anybody can reach them.
Right. And I also think that if somebody watches your recap from last year on that video, they'll learn a lot as well, because it was interesting to watch what you did to come back to win on the second day versus what we were doing in fishing a different type of program. But again, it's pro versus am side. So I would encourage people to watch that as well, because I think they'll get some good takeaways from that.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about, what do you expect this year? So you mentioned that obviously the fishing's good in Port Washington right now. Do you think the fishing's going to be about normal when it hits Salmon Cup time in Sheboygan? Do you expect it to be, pretty good king fishing where you're going to expect a guy to need 3 to 5 adult salmon in that am bucket to have a chance?
Oh, I think so. And that's really been the case in the past. And I do expect it to be decent, because it's 2 weeks out. And, if you kind of watch the fish reports and try to hone in on it and look at where the fish are moving, and if we get any amount of warm weather in particular, I also think that would help as well. Sure, we got a northeast coming, which might get some fish over here. But then if it settles down and we get, some warmer weather, I think it could set up for some excellent Chinook fishing. And I do think last year I think we had 1 out of 5. We had one fish. We had, I think, 3 adult kings, and then we filled it in with a decent sized lake trout and I think a steelhead. But I think that's the exception rather than the rule. I really think that if you don't have 4 to 5 decent 4-year-olds, you're going to have a tough time, because that's the way it was the year before. And then I think it was like 3 years ago when the giant fish were around. I mean, there was a boat that came down from Lake Superior. They got skunked the first day and caught 3 giants and won the 333 the last day. So, and that's a case of, sure, they got some information, but the fishing also turned on significantly between day 1 and day 2.
Yeah, those guys actually came back and won the am too with 5 fish. I mean, that's exactly goes to show you what you said, which is you're never out of it. In that amateur division, they, like you said, they got skunked on day 1, and on day 2 they won everything basically from the amateur division in the 333 side of things. So I would agree with you. I would say last year was sort of an anomaly. Day 2 probably would go down as the toughest single day in Salmon Cup history. I was blanked at 10 o'clock without a bite, 9:30, 10 o'clock, right about there. What did you have at that point?
At that point, we had 4 or 5 fish, but they were all, medium. There was a decent lake trout and some steelhead. And then I think at 10:30, we picked up, I believe, like a 17-pound king. And then we felt a whole lot better about our chances in terms of, maybe moving up the leaderboard, if you will. But without that kicker fish, and that was a midday fish, the semi-famous 11 o'clock bite that my son always refers to. So without that, I think we'd have been well down in the count. So you needed that bonus fish, that's for sure.
Were you south of town?
We were probably, I would say, considered from a mile south. We kept angling out, and I think our best fishing then, it was a mile to 2 miles south, and it was pushing, I believe, 150 to 200 foot mark is really then where we had our best fish. And we were able to fish kind of a mixed spread, because we thought, well, fishing is that tough, you got to catch some other fish. So we had some stuff up on top for steelhead, and then we ran our diver rigs with long leaders and flies and flashers for the kings. And that day, that particular program worked out okay for us.
Yeah, so I remember Thursday at pre-fishing last year, I had maybe the single best 5 big king box I've ever had out of Sheboygan, and it was just crazy. And we fished the first day there, and I think we were the only boat to bring in 5 adult kings on day 1, as far as the pro division went. And we were leading, obviously, and then went back there day 2, and I think it was just brutally tough fishing. And then I think the guys that went south, we were just a tick north. Really off about North Point to Pigeon River. So, I mean, a couple miles really only. But I think the guys that went south historically in Sheboygan, especially that early in the season, is more friendly towards multi-species fishing, lake trout and cohos and steelhead and all that. We all tend to go a little more south. But I had a program in the back pocket on lake trout. Knew we could catch them if we needed to. Just didn't know if we could get enough size and how long it would take us. I knew we'd have to sort through a bunch. We'd have to make some decisions on what was going in the tank and what wasn't, and we did. We threw back a few, but we had a horrible start. I think we started 0 for 4 or 0 for 5, which, adding on to the fact that we hadn't had a bite till 10 a.m., that was a lot of fun, as you could imagine. So, but I would agree. I think this year is going to be more on cue. I think you're going to have to bring your big king A game. So, without giving anything away that you don't want to, and feel free to hold anything back, what is your general Sheboygan tournament program? If you want to talk a little bit about, flasher flies, magnum spoons, when you're going to go out for big kings out of Sheboygan, kind of what are you looking for that time of year? What's some of your selections? How far down are you usually fishing?
Sure, great question. And we tend to fish a little simpler setup. I mean, there are a lot of times when we'll just fish 6 rods. We'll fish the 2 downriggers, we'll fish the 2 wire dipsies, and we'll fish a couple of coppers. This year, though, after watching a lot of the educational stuff you put out there and starting to do it last year, we'll probably run an 8-rod spread and use some thumper rods as well with, the 8 and 10 ounce sinkers. So we've got those rigged up. So that would be the spread. We would put generally we'll run one big spoon on a downrigger. That really has produced for us, and sometimes on an SWR, but that would be our deepest rod furthest back, and then above that it would be a flasher fly. One other thing that we've done on the downrigger that's occasionally worked for us, and it did work 3 years ago for a 28-pounder. I think that year we won the big combo, but we'll run a 13-inch blade with a 42 to 48-inch fly way back, 120 to 140 feet down deep, and that actually doesn't catch a lot of fish, but when it goes off, you're thinking 20 pounds all the time. The primary king takers for us, though, are the wire divers. We've learned some lessons regarding running longer leaders, so we certainly do that now. The color patterns we use are not a lot different than you talk about, the blue and silver, green and silver, 15 to 17-foot leaders on those. And then the thumpers are always flasher fly combinations. And then on the coppers, we can run flasher flat, but a lot of times, I bet 3/4 of the time, we'll run a magnum spoon on our coppers. And that time of the year, we're probably going to run a 175 to 250s, maybe a 300, but really not much more than that. Because just as you said many times in your videos, you're probably generally in the top 50 feet, unless you've got a big warm water blow in that came by. And we do run some meat. Last year on the pre-fishing, we had 2 nice kings that came with meat. The first day we got one on a wire diver, but on Sunday we couldn't get a fish to touch a meat rig, so then we went back to the flasher fly program. But generally, if we're running meat, it'll probably be 2 or 3 meat rigs at the most, because speed-wise we can stay pretty slow and still fish the combination effectively.
Yeah, I would agree. That was one of the things I really learned when I was in New York a couple weeks ago and had a ton of fun fishing over there. You probably saw some stuff on Facebook. It was actually one of the few times in my fishing career that I would say I was overly proud of some of the things that I had done, because when I built that new salmon candy spoon, or put it together and sort of, designed it, my thought process was to be able to fish it at a very low speed that guys like to fish meat.
Right.
And I like to fish my flasher fly program on, which is like a 1.8 to 2.2,
right,
and particularly more of your 1.8 to 2.0 speed. And we did a lot of that in New York, 1.8 to 2.0. That entire week I was there fishing a lot of meat. And we mixed in some of the spoons, and they were dynamite. And you wouldn't have been able to do that with some of the other heavier brands of spoons out there. So I agree with you. Spoons, especially in the situation where you're in, if I was going to give a suggestion to the amateur boats, I would say make sure you got some mag spoons out, because again, it doesn't really hurt you to catch a smaller fish. You don't have to weigh it, and you're not under the gun necessarily of having to have 5 good ones each day. So the thing about spoons is, and that week in New York showed it. We won the salmon slam, which was the big 5 salmon, and 2 lake trout. But we won the 1K a day, the big fish of the day, twice on spoons.
Mm-hmm.
The other 3 came on meat.
Yeah.
So it's, it goes, so my point of that, and I've always said this, is if you put them all in a barrel, all the big fish you catch, the bulk of them will be on meat and flies, the big ones, but that rare occasional little bit bigger rare one, he comes on a spoon a lot of times. So it's crazy how that works.
Yeah, I know when I look at the results of the KDs, Kewanee-Door County Salmon Derby through the years, you will always see every year one giant or 2 giants that are coming on spoons. In a year, it's exactly right. It might only be 1 out of 4, but they're certainly worth having in the spread in my mind. And quite honestly, they're easy. I mean, if you're going to put out bonus baits and we're going to run 8 rods instead of 6, easy enough to put them out there. And sometimes you can put them back in over the top of something else easier than you're going to do with any other type of rig.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your boat for a second. So you got a Pro line. You mentioned that earlier. What size is it?
It's a 29-footer sport fishing model with twin outboards. So a good solid fishing boat, a good sea boat too.
Okay.
And we picked it up about 11 years ago, my son and I, and it was kind of interesting because he had said, well, gee, you want to go in with me? And I think he thought there's no way Dad will ever get rid of his 4 winds. And I said, yeah, let's do that. And so he got rid of his sport craft and I got rid of mine, and we went in together, and then we can put it at Port Washington. He's in Germantown, so it's closer for him. I've got more time, so I can run down there. And so anyway, it's been a good boat, and good. It's good in the cross seas as well. So when we get broadside seas, whereas my previous boat was not, so I really appreciate that. And it's got room for my grandsons, and they can do all their stuff as well. But they're pretty serious fishermen too.
Well, that's really good. Yeah, and you got the twin outboards is an interesting thing because I think that's coming along, in the salmon fishing, but hasn't necessarily always been popular. There's obviously way more trailerable boats doing serious salmon fishing now than ever before. But and yours is trailerable in theory, but I mean it's not
Right.
something you would want to tow all over the country necessarily. But it's pretty big and heavy. But what is on the back? Hondas, if I remember
we got
right?
a couple of 225 Hondas, and the nice part about the 4-strokes is that they troll down. There are times like yesterday I almost threw out a bag because I couldn't get the down speed below 2.6 going downwind from the waves. But then the fish started biting better at 2.6 than they did at 2.2, so I was okay with that. But generally speaking, we don't have to fish a bag. You get great boat control when you're trolling with a big outboard like that as well versus my smaller boat. You don't have as good a boat control when you've got an 8 or a 10 horse kicker motor. But so that part we really enjoy. And it's a safety feature as well. And it's a relatively fast boat. It'll get up and run in the low 40s. So if we got a really hot spot during the Salmon Cup, hopefully we can usually get there as quick as anybody can.
Absolutely. I remember when I first got my Thompson, or maybe I got the Thompson, I guess, the first year of the tournament, but maybe the second year or something. I remember that was a fast boat. It was a 24-footer with a 350 mag that went in the mid-40s.
Right.
And I remember one of the years in particular, maybe it was 2010, maybe it was 11, but I remember sort of quote-unquote racing you guys. We were the 2 guys out front, right, letting her go. And I remember that, that boat had everything that the Thompson had, which was pretty cool. But that was sort of one thing I wanted to touch on, which is, that is a huge advantage because if you want to run in these tournaments, so if you're, it's a whole kind of different world, right? If you want to fish, if you're going to get into salmon tournament fishing, you kind of got to almost make a decision to some level. Do you want a big 30-some footer that's super comfortable, that doesn't get rocked around a lot, yada, yada, yada? Maybe like what our friend Scott has, in his boat, or do you, but he's going to get maybe 30-mile-an-hour top speed or something, or do you want something that's a little bit more movable around, that you can get upper 30s, 40-mile-an-hour on? Because if you wanted to run to Port Washington or even Concordia, let's say, where you fished yesterday, which has got to be 35 miles from Sheboygan, that's really not out of reach at all for you guys.
Right.
If you throw all the gas money and all that stuff aside and you just say, it's a nice day out and we were catching fish there pre-fishing and we want to get there for the tournament, that is totally 100% legitimate to say we're going to run to Concordia from Sheboygan in the Mojo Banker.
Yep.
It's probably not for, at least half the field. I mean, I own a 10-meter Trojan with Nate that we charter fish on the fish stick. It's not legitimate to say that the fish stick's going to Concordia. So that's just not going to happen. It's going to take him 2.5 hours to get there or so. So was that something that you thought about when you bought the boat, or just kind of worked out that way? Or
Well, it's interesting because my son does a lot of research, and I give him the credit for that. And he was looking at the internet, and this was during the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. And then he started looking at saltwater boats, and he saw this one with twin outboards, and I think he recognized the advantage of it before I did, because I didn't realize that it could troll down as slow as it did with the big 4 strokes, the things that it does. So I'll give him the credit for that. And then we built the trailer and had it trailered up here. So I think it was kind of one of those love at first sight things. It's like maybe we weren't specifically looking for it, but once we got it, we were very happy. The one disadvantage, though, is netting fish. Netting fish over the top of 2 outboards can be a bit challenging sometimes as well. So if we get a big fish on that we really need to get in, we might pull some rods and try and take it off the corner many times. Especially if you got long dipsy leaders and you got to leader them in, we try and go to the corner of the boat and bring them in that way and clear that side out. I would say that that's probably the only disadvantage that I see is netting over the top of the outboards. But again, it was a good choice, maybe a love at first sight choice, but we're glad we did it.
Oh, absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%. I think it's a great boat. I did fish tournaments for a couple of years on a similar boat, a Pursuit, 30-foot offshore with twin 250 Yamahas. And we went through a little bit of that same learning curve, I guess, with the netting challenges. But we were pretty blessed in that situation. I fished there was 5 of us, and I was the only one without a charter captain license at that time. I've since, gotten one, but so there was plenty of skill level on the boat to manufacture and maneuver and do whatever we needed to do, but it can be a challenge. You're right. But on the flip side, we made a highlighted run on tournament trail history from Wisconsin to the islands and Michigan and back. And we only could do that if we were in something like what we had or you had, to be able to make that run. So pretty exciting stuff. I want to talk a little bit about the major change this year in the Salmon Cup and just get your take. I'm not even sure you totally understand it, because this was just a dream that I had up that's sort of similar to what they do in all the tournaments in New York. And I'm really excited about it, and I think a lot of people should get into it and get into this for it, which is because Tournament Trail's not coming with the 333, they've decided to cut back some tournaments. I knew already back 6 months ago or 5 months ago that Salmon Showdown was coming back, and that's why. And obviously I didn't say anything for the purpose that they asked me not to, and it totally makes sense. I congratulate them and I encourage them, and I'm excited. I think I got Scott poked and pronged enough to go fish a few of those and maybe see if we can throw our hat in the ring there. But anyway, so what I wanted to do to replace that was I didn't want to copy 333 and just do a 3 over 3 days and call it something else or whatever. That's never been my style to do that. So what I decided I wanted to do is do the 1K a day, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. So how that's going to work is we're going to pay $1,000 a day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, for the single biggest fish of each day. But here's the kicker. We're also going to pay $1,000 out on Sunday for the guy with the 3 biggest, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you have to weigh one in. So when you guys go out pre-fishing on Friday, John, regardless of how it goes for you, you got to kind of at least try to catch one that's going to pull out some line and play the game, because now I'm sure, I guess I didn't look if you signed up, but I'm sure you did. You're probably in the kids tournament, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yes, I did.
So you will be trying to catch some big ones anyways. But regardless, even if you're just pre-fishing for the tournament, you should probably try to catch at least one good one, because there's $1,000 on the line for $100 entry fee. There's $1,000 on the line for the 3 biggest, but there's also $1,000 a day. So we're going to give $4,000 out between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, just on single big fish and a 3-pack of big fish. So being that you and I have literally never discussed this, what do you think? I mean, what did you think about that? Did you understand it that way? And what is your thoughts?
Well, I understood that it was $1,000 over each day for 3 days. Didn't realize that it was a combination of 3. And I really liked the idea because, And to me, to be honest with you, unless you won the 333, you really weren't going to win any large prizes. And none of us are in it for the prizes. That's for sure. My grandsons, they're more about if I can get a salmon cup, that's what they want. So, but I like the idea, and we are signed up for the kids derby as well. And I think the $100 covers all 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. That's correct. Yep.
I think it's a great idea. The only other thing I thought about that consider for future years is also maybe then having categories for if people want to throw in $50 or $100 for biggest fish in each species. Because that's another way. It's more book work. Obviously, it's more record keeping, but really, I think this is a great start and a great way to keep people engaged over all 3 days. And it's another one of those things which says you're never out of it. I mean, you just need one fish. So I think it's a great idea, Russell.
Good. I'm glad that you like it. I kind of wanted to get your take on it and see what your overall thought was. I'm pretty fired up about it. I'm going to talk about the last adjustment to the Salmon Cup weekend, which we have done this before. I'm hoping we get a good participation. So far, we've had quite a few sign up already, which is good. But that is the kids and ladies tournament on Friday, which again is primarily for fun. It's just $100 entry, and it's a very relaxed rules. It's designed to be able to get for guys that are maybe setting up for the weekend, probably primarily more local or whatever, and they're going to be gone all weekend or whatever, and the wife's home with the kids and whatever. You can get your kids and your wife involved on Friday now, and it's pretty basic rules. So 9 lures. It's based on a 3-person deal, and
okay.
you can count the men on the boat as well for the lures. The only real rule is so it's 5 fish, just like
Okay.
the Pro Division of Salmon Cup or whatever. But the only real rule is kids and ladies have to do the reeling on the rods. So for safety purposes, and because I don't want anybody losing any gear or anything really, the guys can grab the rod out of the holder. The guys can net the fish. They can do all that. But you grab it and you give it to the kid or the lady, right? That's the sportsman way to do it. We're not going to be out there watching. And if you want to cheat, yada, yada, whatever. This is supposed to be for kids and ladies. And the idea is, there he is on the diver, grab it, hand it to the lady or kid, and they do the work.
Yeah.
And you net that fish, and it's their fish, and they get to bring it in. And we did this a couple times over the years. It was a ton of fun. For you, it's a guarantee, and it's already a done deal because you got some kids along. Your grandchildren are participating. But what I thought of it for was I thought, there's a lot of dads in particular that are fishing this thing for the weekend, and they're gone all weekend. Now they can get their kids out, maybe even their wife and their buddy's kids or wife or whatever out on Friday. Hopefully the weather plays nice, and you can get a little extra fun. And having that 1K a day in there and everything, now there's a whole bunch of reasons to fish Friday as well. So should be a lot of fun.
No, I think it's a terrific idea. I know I could, if it was a perch tournament, I could get my wife Mary involved, but salmon fishing, she leaves to the guys. But yeah, it's good to hear that. What's the upper age limit in terms of kids?
18. So I figure at 18 they're adults.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. So if it's set, under the age of 18 or a female. So if they're an adult but a lady,
Sure.
and it also is, there's no limit on fish you can catch or anything, but obviously you have to have at least one kid or lady on the board to participate. But that's why I did 5 fish. You only have to have one. So if let's say it's a team of 3 guys are going to go out and they have one child between the 3 of them, they can take the one child and go fish and bring their 5 fish back. And that's it. Now, obviously, you're only allowed to legally keep 5, so you got to make sure because she reels in or he reels in those 5. That's the 5 you get. Yeah. But that is at least you can still participate. Was my point. So, like for us, I think we're going to probably have. I shouldn't say it's 100% because I haven't spoke to Scott thoroughly about this, but as far as I understand, I think it's just going to be my 2 girls. So we'd be able to catch 10 fish legally and weigh 5, and that's fine. So Elise and Lily will be with me. I only got a little while. It's Elise's birthday this week. She's going to be 17, so I might be able to sneak one more kids and ladies tournament in for her. But then she's going to get off to college, and Lily will be around yet for a few years, thankfully. But, time's going fast. I mean, I'm sure you can remember back to 2010, Lily running around and fishing the tournaments and yada, yada. And now what she is, just like your grandboys are. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And, Jake is 17, Alex is 14, and John's 12. So Jake's got another year yet. And then, if we have the amateur, or I should say the kids derby and ladies derby next year, he'll have to just help out.
Yeah, he'll probably be the new net man is probably what he'll be at that point. But that's okay. That's okay. So
those are great tools. I like it. It's
yep.
In fact, my grandson texted me 2 days ago, and he said, Alex said, Grandpa, did you sign us up? And I said, well, did you check with your dad? He's good. I said, okay, Alex, you're the captain. So
Perfect. So sort of recap what we got coming up here in a couple weeks. June 10th, 11th, and 12th is the Sheboygan Salmon Cup. On the 10th, we're going to have day one of the 1K a day. So we're going to pay $1,000 out on we pay everything out on the weekend, on Sunday at the end. But we're going to pay $1,000 out, for the big fish from Friday. We're also going to have the ladies and kids tournament on Friday. Saturday and Sunday will be the normal Pro-Am Salmon Cup tournament, and we will also pay out the 1K a day for both Saturday and Sunday. And then we will have the big three Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So just so everybody understands, and I gotta, I'll probably put a video out to explain this a little better. You can't weigh more than one a day, so you do have to weigh something in on Friday, even if you're just pre-fishing for the 1K a day. Now you don't have to do that to enter the 1K a day. For $100, if I was not showing up till Friday night, I'd still get in because we're going to pay out $1,000 Saturday and $1,000 Sunday. You just wouldn't be eligible for the three popper. But almost everybody pre-fishes at least Friday, so makes total sense. Obviously, if the weather doesn't participate on Friday or something, we may make a decision to do something a little bit different. Maybe we'd make it where you could weigh two on one of the days or something. I would never say somebody couldn't go out and pre-fish. That's their own choice. But if it's rough to the point where the guys with smaller boats are not going to be able to go out safely, I won't allow for a big fish that day. So kind of just throw that out there so everybody knows. But you got anything else to add for the Salmon Cup? I mean, other than what we've talked about already?
Well, I think just to reinforce a couple of things. Number one, I really like the format you've come up with, Russell. It's a great format, keeps people engaged in all 3 days if they want to be. And the other thing, just to encourage people, in particular on the amateur side, is that, again, I know I've reinforced it a couple times, but you're never going to be out of this tournament. And it's a good group of people. We've always had a great time doing it. Get your families involved if you can, because it's a great, family building opportunity as well. And I'm just glad that even though Tournament Trail isn't there, that you've continued to do this, because it really is the highlight of our early summer. And so we're really glad that you do that. So thank you for that.
No, I really appreciate you saying that. It means a lot. It's not always the most fun thing to get going. I mean, I do participate in it, and I always have, and I always will, and that's kind of comes with the lay of the land. But it's been a very good tournament for many, many years. We've had some ups and downs in participation, but I think that participation has gone with the ups and downs in the participation in the lake. When we've had some years where fishing was a little tougher and weather was a little tougher, we had less boats. And then when we had some years where, like last year, where fishing's been just outstanding and the weather's been outstanding, we've had record boats. So far, based on pre-entries, I would say that we are on pace to have a really good Salmon Cup. We've never taken pre-entries before, so it's a little hard for me to say, but I'm seeing a pretty good number. I would say we're already in the range of some of the lower years of the Salmon Cup. So, I mean, with 3 weeks to go and the fact that a lot of people are used to signing up at the tournament, I would say that's probably a really good sighting. So super excited about it. Look forward to seeing you coming up here to Sheboygan in a couple of weeks. And good luck fishing if you get out a little more, and keep them grand boys ready to rock and roll for the Sheboygan Salmon Cup.
Yep, and I will do that, and eventually I'll get some of those granddaughters involved as well.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, Lily and Elise will be ready for the kids tournament. Lily will be out there for the cup, so tell the boys they're going to have a little bit of competition.
Well, they know they do. They definitely understand that that's a stiff competition from those ladies.
All right, well, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks again for doing it. This was Russell Gahagan with the Morning Buzz with John Reinke from Mojo Banker.